Welcome to the Petersfield Hustings. I'd like to welcome everyone joining us on Zoom this evening for the Petersfield Hustings, and this is the second of two hustings we're holding to help inform the Petersfield electorate prior to casting votes for the 6th May local elections. Tonight, Monday 26 April, is the hustings for City Council candidates in Petersfield. Yesterday evening, we held the hustings for County Council candidates. Both events are being recorded and will be available on our hustings website. I'm Helen Weinstein, and I've been asked to be the chair of the Petersfield hustings for 2021 because I'm a local resident and I have a lot of experience in this kind of role, and I'm not a member of any political party. My aim is for these hustings to be a fair forum at which Petersfield candidates address their potential voters by answering a series of questions posed by local residents. The questions for City Council candidates tonight covers issues where it is the City Council that delivers services for benefits, bins and recycling, city centre and market square, community centres and events, graffiti and litter, homelessness and housing, parks and open spaces, local planning, public toilets, rivers and mooring, refugee and asylum cases and welfare, tree services. These hustings are a new event for our community in Petersfield, and the organising team has also provided a website with lots of relevant information, including a recording of these events where you can already view the recorded Zoom of the County Council candidate hustings from last night's event. And if you look at the Zoom chat stream, you'll find the address put up every so often during tonight's event. Importantly, every candidate for City and County Council for Petersfield has not only been invited to attend these hustings, but was also asked to answer the same 6 introductory questions before the hustings. We've had many questions submitted for both hustings, so thank you very much to people who live, volunteer, work or study in Petersfield for engaging with local issues in this event. The order in which the questions will be asked tonight has been ranked carefully according to their importance and specificity to Petersfield and the frequency of submission. Even though we've merged similar questions, far more were submitted than we can pose tonight. All of the questions not asked tonight will nevertheless be sent to all of the candidates, and we hope candidates will respond and all their answers received will go up promptly on our Petersfield Hustings website. The etiquette for these Zoom hustings is for the public to be muted. The candidates have been briefed beforehand on the processes, and our moderators are in listening mode, paying attention to the chat room. So please, public, do ask questions, share concerns and give feedback. Only moderators will capture your chat comments, and your extra questions will inform the priority given to live questions tonight and will also be emailed afterwards to all the candidates so that they can provide answers on our website prior to the 6th May election day. We are very pleased that 6 of the 12 City Council candidates are attending the live hustings tonight, and they are Emmanuel Caro, Lib Dem, Michael Davey, Labour, Cosmo Lupton, Lib Dem, Shapur Mefta, Conservative, Richard Robertson, Labour, Katie Thornborough, Labour. Shapur Mefta has agreed to participate in these hustings despite fasting for Ramadan, so we understand around 8:15, 8:20 tonight, Shapur may close his camera for a few moments in order to have some sustenance at sundown. May I thank all the candidates for their participation and celebrate with the local community that we are trying something new with these hustings to help advance democracy in Petersfield. And good luck to everybody tonight. Opening statements. To open the hustings, we've asked each candidate to give a 2-minute statement. Candidates, please unmute your microphone when I state your name. Please keep an eye on the digital clock, as no one will be allowed to speak for more than the allotted time and you will be muted if the clock hits 0. For fairness, the candidates are rotated at each question, and in the opening statements, I'll cue the candidates to answer in alphabetical order. So to start with, Emmanuel Caro, please unmute yourself for your opening statement now.
Good evening, and I've been living and working in Petersfield for the past 12 years. And I've always felt a very special connection to Mill Road, to the local shops, pubs, and cafes. I appreciate Petersfield's exceptional cultural diversity, the strength of our local community, the openness and tolerance of the residents, and the mutual support among neighbors, not only on my street, on Guida Street, but also across Petersfield. I am running for City Council because I want to contribute to improve and protect our area, especially the parks and public spaces, and to preserve and reinforce the link in our community. In the past few months, I have talked with over 500 residents in Petersfield, and to my surprise, many residents felt disengaged with local politics, and they couldn't even name their current councillors. I have been living there for many years too, and I've never met any either. I felt local councillors need to be on the ground to listen to residents and to fix local issues. On the city level, I deplore the current city council lack of ambition and lack of vision. Cambridge needs to be much more ambitious to tackle climate change with concrete action, building eco-friendly houses, protecting green spaces and biodiversity, and ambitious policy for public transport for pedestrians and cyclists, to tackle house crisis, building more affordable houses, and to bring the community together with more cultural and social events. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Mike Davey, please unmute yourself for your opening statement now.
Hi, my name's Mike Davey and I'm seeking re-election to the City Council. Can I start by saying thank you to Val, Pete and Helen for organising the hustings, and simply to say I'm delighted to be here. My family have lived on Riverside since 2009, which as folk will know used to be part of the Petersfield ward. My daughter attended St Matthew's, she's now at Parkside. My doctor's surgery is York Street. My politics are grounded and rooted in working with and for communities, so although I live only 200 metres over the border, it's gratifying to serve a community I know so well. My first priority on being elected in 2019 was simply to be a good ward councillor, to listen and advocate on our residents' behalf, to take responsibility and explain when things don't go as planned as well as when they do. That priority will not change. Over the last 2 years, I've represented residents in both big and small issues. The variety is astonishing, so be it tackling antisocial behaviour on Vicarage Terrace or Mill Road, assisting individuals with hiccups in the planning system, or challenging licensing applications, or campaigning successfully with residents against outrageous developments such as on St Matthew's Piece or at the Flying Pig. If re-elected, my main focus must be to enable our ward to emerge from the pandemic relatively unscathed, picking up and maintaining support to mutual aid networks and local community groups. To get through to the other side of the pandemic, local councils will need to be there for our people, particularly the most vulnerable. To conclude, my work background was predominantly in the public sector. Since leaving the county council, I've been the chair of governance at a local school, chair of board at Centre 33. If I was re-elected, I would bring my experience of the voluntary sector and local government, both as a councillor and an officer, to bear. I understand how it works. I want to put my knowledge and experience to good effect to serve this community that I know and love. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Cosmo Lupton, please unmute yourself for your opening statement now.
Thank you very much. Listening to so many of you over the past few weeks, I've been really struck by the passion and thoughtfulness with which people in Petersfield consider the challenges facing them and our city. However, I think too many people feel very distant from the levers of power at the moment. A lot of people feel like they don't have a voice at the table in how decisions are made that affect their lives. I believe local government can and should challenge that feeling, and I know that a Liberal Democrat Council is the best way to ensure it does. I think we've shown that in our approach here in Petersfield, listening to people, working with residents to tackle issues like antisocial behaviour, vandalism, housing repairs, problems big or small. We aren't about reigning over people, we are about working with them. We want meaningful and informed consultation. and for the council really to listen, not just about the big issues like Mill Road, as important as that is, but in getting the basics right with effective and responsive council services. And by listening to you, we have discovered, I think, some of the central ways that people feel their independence has been undermined. Kind of top of that list for me, I think, is poor housing and homelessness. I recently met, for instance, a young mother in a council home who's not been able to get repairs for 10 months. There's now repairs scheduled. That has left her kids in a really unhealthy environment, a bedroom covered in mold. I think we have to demand a lot better than that. I know she found it a really humiliating experience and felt like she had no control, and she's not alone. Rampant pollution also comes high on the list, as does lack of mobility and safety for vulnerable residents. By listening to you, we have formed clear plans to address these. I know together we can build a fairer, greener and more inclusive city. Thank you.
Thank you, Cosmo. Shapur Mefta, please unmute yourself for your opening statement now.
Good evening all, and thank you for inviting me to this Hustings. For people that don't know me, my name is Shapur Mefta and I'm the chairman of Mill Road Traders Association. And I've been running my business in Mill Road for over 26 years. I have developed friendships and associations which are extremely important to me and ensure I have a strong sense of belonging to this community. I do my best to listen and try to help as much as possible. But I know there is more I could offer in an official capacity. I also have previous experience of being a city councillor, so I have some understanding of the way the system is supposed to work, all of which stands me in a good stead if I were to be elected. Thank you very much. It's short, but thank you.
Thank you, Shapur. Shapur, can you just check your connection? Because you've started to become a little bit muffled on and off. So if you can check that before you answer the next time, that will be very helpful. Richard Robertson, please could you unmute yourself for your opening statement now?
Thank you. Now I am seeking re-election to play my part serving the residents of Petersfield, both through community groups and with individuals' issues, protecting and improving the environment and helping the area thrive and develop. Now these are not just empty words. I have 15 years experience as a city councillor for our ward, years in which I have defended the interests of local residents from predatory developers, obtained funding for environmental works and highway improvements, and ensured that a brand new community centre is built on the ironworks site. It's under construction right now and it should be ready by the end of the year. But there's always a lot more work to be done and I'm ready to take it on. Now, unfortunately, there are parts of the ward which suffer from antisocial behaviour, often linked to drug addiction and street drinking. My colleagues and I have made sure that the City Council has a well-resourced and effective community safety team. And we've brought in their assistance to help with antisocial behaviour so that local people do not feel threatened or intimidated on the streets and open spaces of Petersfield. For Cambridge as a whole, I would continue to help manage the finances of the council, if I get elected, that is. And I will use my background as a chartered accountant and ensure that the council does as much as possible to tackle poverty, inequality and homelessness in our city. I would also take a special interest into tackling climate change by ensuring that Cambridge moves as quickly as possible to a net zero carbon position. And that means not just the council, but we will make sure that businesses and everybody plays their part too. I hope that you feel I'm the sort of person that you want as one of your councillors, and I hope you will elect me next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Katie Thornborough, please could you unmute yourself for your opening statement now?
I'd like to echo other candidates' thanks to the organisers of this hustings and all those attending. Being able to meet with residents and listen to their worries or issues, points of interest and points of concern.
Katie, on my side, you've frozen a bit.
I find very rewarding. Sorry, should I start again?
Can you start your first phrase again, please, Katie, and we'll start the timer again.
Apologies. I'd like to echo the other candidates' thanks to the organisers of this hustings and all those attending. Being able to meet with residents and listening to their worries or issues, points of interest and points of concern in person or online is one of the most important parts of being a city councillor, and one I find personally very rewarding. I prefer to be out and about though, meeting residents and business owners on the doorstep, at coffee mornings or at organised community events, online if that is needed, of course. But I like to join in too. I get involved with litter picks and removing graffiti. I'll represent residents speaking out at planning applications. I'll help plant new trees and water them too. I turn up at meetings to lobby on issues important to residents. I champion our local businesses and do what I can to help organisations that lead on climate issues or support food waste reduction or fight for social justice. It's what being a Labour activist and a Labour councillor means. We turn up, get the job done. I think that I have been an effective ward councillor, dealing with issues, helping residents and making sure that the concerns that matters to my ward are properly represented. I want to carry on doing that, and I'm standing for re-election because I want to make sure that decisions made by local government reflect the interests of everyone, not just a privileged few. I want to continue to deliver Labour's promises, particularly around the environment. We must find ways to live that balances people's needs for a good quality of life with the planet's needs for us to live sustainably, and the City Council has a key role to.
Thank you, Katie. I think we just lost your last phrase, but thank you for keeping to time, everybody. We're now going to go to the questions that have been submitted from the public. Could we please have the first question that's been submitted?
Right. The pandemic has accentuated Petersfield's extreme lack of public open space. Do you have any ideas for how Petersfield's public open space provision in general, i.e. beyond St. Matthew's Piece, could be increased?
For each candidate, you've 2 minutes to answer, and I'll give a summary of the question when I name you in turn to answer. So Mike Davey, you're up first. How could Petersfield generally have access to more public open space? Your answer, please. Please unmute.
Thank you, Helen. I think it's been clear by being involved in the discussions around St. Matthew's Piece that Petersfield is the ward with the least public green space in the city, and whilst it's lovely to be in Mill Road Cemetery and it's nice to go to Fenners, they don't really count. So I think it's important, therefore, in the developments that are taking place within the north side of the city, if I can call it, that we ensure green space is in place. So when we built them on Mill Road, when we look like the developments on Devonshire Road, we have to ensure that green space is part and parcel of that discussion. And I think in that north side of the ward, I love the idea that's coming from some residents of creating a green street down York and Ainsworth, and how we develop those and looking at using people like on the Verge to assist in that process becomes really important. So I think that's the first thing. Petersfield is, I think, 3 different areas, if I'm honest, and the new area down in Arcadia is, again, shows that you can, if you're inventive, use green space, and you can start to look effectively at what one can do. How you then develop it further becomes problematic because of the very urban nature of Petersfield. So I think you have to be using initiatives that involve how you might look at how streets are used, how you look at how you can prevent cars, I think, in certain places, whereby you therefore how you model the streets. I think you also have to try and ensure that you have a hierarchy of use, so pedestrians must come first. So going back to it though, it's because it's an urban environment, we have to look at innovative ways of how we can use our streets to green the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Cosmo Lupton, you're going to be up next. If you can unmute, the question is, how could Petersfield generally have access to more public open space? Your answer, please.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a really important question. And I suppose in terms of how we're approaching it, we see it very much as an issue of well-being. We recognise that particularly over the last year, open spaces have been such a lifeline for so many people. And it's very much an issue of equality too. I think Petersfield doesn't get its fair share of open space, as has been touched upon already. Obviously, we need to make sure that there is new open space in any new developments. I think that the Travis Perkins site, for instance, want to be making sure that there is really generous open space there, that it's really good quality open space. I think the idea of community gardens, that kind of, and allotment space, for instance, is particularly valuable. I think we also need to make sure that we're enriching the open spaces that we have, including play and children's spaces. We have a plan to do that, whether it be investing in new water fountains, having up-to-date management plans for our open spaces, and really consulting with people how they want them to be improved. And I think when it comes to play parks, we also need to make sure that we really have a strong sense of what the state of the equipment is, a good register of play parks so that we can target investment where there does need to be that repair and maintenance. I know, for instance, that some residents in, to give one example, Ravensworth Gardens, the smaller park space there, really felt that actually some of the playground equipment needs a bit of TLC. So I think that really making sure we're keeping on top of that, promoting the open spaces that we have and investing in that, as well as getting on top of things like litter, making sure we're refurbishing our public toilets. I think we want to make sure there is good quality open spaces as possible, and that will mean that we have that better access. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Cosmo. Shapur Mefta, you're next. How could Petersfield generally have access to more public open space? Your answer, please.
I think we have to look at these big developments which are happening in Petersfield. One of them, which is as Cosmo mentioned, the Travis Perkins, which is going to move and is going to turn into accommodation. We have to make sure that they will allocate enough space for the green space, and then people that can use it public. And then we have to make sure that existing green space which are available are looked after and not be destroyed or anything. And we have to find that anywhere which is not used and can be used as green space, we should be able to obtain that space and turn it into green space, because people are very happy with even a bit of greenery. They just want to go sit down, enjoy it, and whatever it is. And green space is very important, especially these days. People, they just want to walk out of their house, go out somewhere which is nice, clean, sit down, talk to each other, and enjoy their life. And I'm very supportive of green space, and we have to work together to make sure that we can control all these developments which are happening and try to stop them from using all the lands which they're trying to turn it into accommodation, whatever it is. So let's hope that if I can do my best to provide all these things which are promised. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shapur. Shapur, can I just ask you again before your next answer, can you just check on your microphone? Because I think you could be speaking a bit clearer tonight. Next up is Richard Robertson. Please unmute. And the question is, how could Petersfield generally have access to more public open space? Your answer, please.
Well, it's quite a difficult question, and Mike Davey has answered quite a lot of the things I would have said, but nevertheless, I'll have a go. One of the interesting things about the change of ward boundaries is, of course, that is a way of increasing the amount of green space in one's ward. I'm not just thinking of trying to take over Parker's Piece. I was thinking that the Botanic Gardens is now part of the ward, or will be after the election. Now, maybe there's a possibility of getting a special pass card for residents of our ward, so that it becomes a public open space, not just something you have to pay to go into. Yeah, that's an idea that we could certainly look into. The existing open space we've got, I think there's quite a lot of work we could do to increase the biodiversity of some of it. I was thinking of the little green space on the corner of Petworth Street and St Matthew's Street. I mean, that could have some wildflower meadows on it, possibly. Well, no, not meadows, but strips of wildflowers. It's not something that's been done yet, but that's the sort of thing we can brighten up the areas that we do have. There's the Donkey's Common on the other side of, outside the swimming pool. More work could be done on that to improve its biodiversity and attractiveness. So, yeah, but Devonshire Gardens is certainly, it's the one that's up for grabs next, and we certainly should be looking at that. Although, interestingly, I asked the developers recently what they were talking about when they mentioned allotments, and they admitted that it would not actually be on that site. It would be somewhere else that they would expect the allotments to be. That they're trying to get too much on that site at the moment, and it's our job to make sure they don't overdo it and get, like a lot of other developers, just greedy for buildings when there should be open space. So loads of issues to deal with there, but we'll have a go at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Thank you very much. Katie Thornborough, please, could you unmute? How could Petersfield generally have access to more public open space? Your answer, please.
Oh, well, Richard, with the ward boundaries, Richard did mention the Botanic Gardens, but we're also getting the Accordia Gardens, which is public open space, Hobson's Brook, and empty common allotments. So if you haven't explored those areas, I would really recommend it. They're great places, and Empty Common has a wonderful community garden. There is currently a register of equipment and playgrounds across the whole of Cambridge, and there are weekly checks on the equipment mainly because of health and safety, because if anything is unsafe, it has to be dealt with immediately. This is going to be updated in line with the census. So if there's been if there's increase in population, that will be reflected, and it will help get investment in the parks and open spaces we've got in Cambridge. But manage the labour to be spent over the next 2 years for environmental improvement projects. And I'd like to work with all of the residents of Petersfield to see what you would like and see how we can improve the small and larger spaces. Are benches needed, more flowers, places to grow? Are there very small little spaces that we could actually turn into community gardens? And also, could we somehow green more of the streets? I noticed that there was on York Street, somebody has taken out a small bit of pavement and grown a vine up the wall. Maybe we could encourage more greenery down the streets and across the whole space. I'm also keen on any meanwhile spaces that we can provide for residents to grow. We've created 3 across Cambridge already, so maybe there's some places in Petersfield too. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And Katie, before your next time round to answer questions, can I just ask you to see if you could turn off more devices near you so that you don't freeze up while you're answering a question, if possible. Thank you. Emmanuel Caro, your turn next. Please unmute. And the question again is, how could Petersfield generally have access to more open public space? Your answer, please.
So first, I will absolutely agree. There is a lack of green space in Petersfield, and we saw it during COVID, absolutely. So first, it's essential we protect and maintain our existing open space. Not only St. Matthew, Ravensworth Garden has been mentioned before, the cemetery, and there is a lot to do there to maintain the space, but also the biodiversity. So some space need to be also wild meadow, or some space need to encourage biodiversity. Some of the things also that have been mentioned before, like by Katie just before, and that's totally right. We need to encourage also more local initiative. I'm wondering why they haven't done it before in the last few years, but it's clearly something we would like to develop more. I know on Guida Street, we encourage hedgehog highways. So to encourage hedgehog to go from one garden to another. I think we also need to encourage help within the community, like residents can help each other to maintain a garden, especially with elderly or people we don't know how to maintain a garden. So that will help. And also, there's also some missed opportunities. I know Ironworks, it was no green space at all. They cut some trees on Hope Street and there's not so much green space. So that was a missed opportunity. So what we want, if we elected as a city council in Petersfield, is for new development like Devonshire Road to have much, much more green space. The same around the train station is a shame there is not enough green space, it's very minimal. So clearly more green space, more biodiversity, but also involving the community, like every resident learn how to maintain, their front garden, their back garden, and more green within the ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Next, the second question, please, from the public.
Right, St. Matthew's Peace is a vital and much loved public park that has been under continual threat of development. How will you work for its long-term protection? And would you support the compulsory purchase of land on the Peace at a reasonable price?
Thank you. For each candidate, again, you've 2 minutes to answer, and I'll give a summary of the question when I name you in turn to answer. This time first, it's Cosmo Lupton's turn. If you could unmute yourself, and the question is, how would you protect St. Matthew's Peace in the long term? Your answer, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a crucial issue, and I was so pleased to see the recent proposals thrown out, protecting such a wonderful space that so many of us really love. I think certainly you should look at the option of compulsory purchase. I think if for whatever reason that was not possible, I think there's some important lessons from the recent debate over this and opposition to this, which is I think that building a really strong community around the space is so critical, and making sure people really feel they have a stake in it, and as many people as possible feel they have a stake in it. I know Friends of St. Matthew's Peace have done good work on this, including Councillor Davey, of course, and I want to work with them very much. I know also sort of in a more informal way, other residents have also been involved. I want to work with Petersfield Area Community Trust, for instance, in supporting their work with Party on the Peace. And so I think that building that sense of community and engagement is so critical. I think combined with both that engagement, those residents coming together, there are also obviously real clarity of argument and organisation and discipline when it came to how to oppose it with specific policies where it violated a local plan. I think we need to make sure that we do maintain that discipline. So I think overall we've got to keep up the momentum that's been seen with the most recent proposals, not rest on our laurels at all, and continue to fight to protect it. So yeah, I'd be willing to look at whatever option I can to make sure we do protect this essential space. So thank you.
Thank you, Cosmo, for your answer. Next up is Shapur Mefta. Please unmute. Thank you. How would you protect St. Matthew's Peace in the long term? Your answer, please.
This is I hope you can hear me better now. This is a very important issue, and we have to do anything in our means to protect it. If it's a compulsory buy or whatever it is, but we have to make sure we keep that St. Matthew's, whatever it is, we have to control, we have to do our best to maintain it. And I'm sure once the election is over, people will, or all the new councillors or the existing councillors which are elected, they have to put all their efforts to be able to control it. And if it comes to it, I'm sure the city council, they have the money to purchase the land if it has to be compulsory or whatever. But we have to preserve and look after St. Matthew's. And hopefully that can be done. Because we do need every piece of those greens we have, and we have to make sure we're not going to lose them, because once they've gone, it's impossible to replace them. So my opinion is after election, whoever is in control, they have to put all their efforts to be able to control it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shapur. Richard Robertson, if you could unmute. How would you protect St Matthew's peace in the long term? Your answer, please.
Well, firstly, I must say I was very pleased to work hard with the local community to protect it from the recent attempt to build a massive monster on top of the dance school. That was very pleasing to work with you all. I think we have to recognise that we were successful partly because mainly because the existing local plan has got policies in it which protect it, and we were able to demonstrate that those policies were not being they were being ignored by the developers. So we've now got an emerging new local plan, and we need to make sure that that new local plan has at least as strength and perhaps more strength in it to defend that important open space from further attacks on it from developers. The other thing we could do is part of the public open space at the New Street end has got a car park on it, or what should be public open space has got a car park on it. I think we need to tackle the owners about converting that back to actual open space that is grass, because I don't think they should be able to get away with it using it as a car park. So that's another area we could actually go to them and positively act to do something about it. And the question is, would I support buying it by compulsory purchase? Yes, I would, if a reasonable price could be obtained. I'm not sure that's possible, but if it's possible, then we would have a go. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Katie Thornborough, you're next. Please unmute.
Yes.
How would you protect St Matthew's peace in the long term? Your answer, please.
Well, I loved St Matthew's Peace when I lived right next to it 30 years ago. I love it now, living right next to it again, and I want to love it in another 30 years. Yeah, as Richard said, the planning, there was due process and the application was very rightly turned down. I was on the planning committee that listened to all of the reasons and arguments and voted against the application. Having an application turned down will provide some protection going forward if anybody should consider developing this in the future. I think one thing that would strengthen the open space is actually having more data and information about it. It's an extraordinary place. It's not just open for playing. People play football and basketball. There's the play area, but people go and have picnics. They have they do Tai Chi in the morning. And there's wonderful biodiversity. I think we need to really strengthen and let people know how very important this is. And that can be done by looking at all of the different uses and having data about how much the proportion of time that is being used, how busy it is, and the range of people that use it. But also, actually, let's measure how much biodiversity there is in this lovely open space. Let's have information about it that people can access. It would be an education opportunity as well. And let's have a notice board or QR code so that people understand and really treasure this going forward. If there could be compulsory purchase and that's what the residents want, and there was a way forward, I would definitely work with them to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Emmanuel Caro, you're next. How would you protect St Matthew's peace in the long term? Your answer, please.
Yeah, I mean, just to repeat what's been said before, I mean, it's really crucial to protect St Matthew's peace. I use it myself for the local resident on a regular basis, and I've been very, very pleased it was rejected like everyone else here. But I was also very pleased that over 300 residents rejected and objected to this development. And it's thanks, of course, to the amazing work of the Friends of St. Matthew's Friends, but also to the councillor, we have to recognize, and also to the Liberal Democrats, because we've been quite active, sending letters and knocking doors to residents to encourage them to object. So we've been all pulling together in the same direction. So obviously, if we have an opportunity long term to lock the situation and to buy the land, absolutely, it's something we need to consider and to push forward as a city council, because you will guarantee the space for the next generation. But also, I think, was being said a bit before, but is an amazing space for all generation and for all type of use, not only for sport, for children, for elderly, for people to get breath of fresh air, but we should probably organize more community events. I mean, we have amazing events sometime in the year, like Party on the Peace, but hopefully we would like to create more events. And I would like to champion this type of local initiative to have more opportunities in a good days in summer and in spring, to have more events for the local community to get on together and to kind of having more socializing time. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Mike Davey, your turn next. Please unmute. How would you protect St Matthew's peace in the long term? Your answer, please.
Thank you, Helen. Being involved in the campaign and being part of the Friends of St Matthew's Peace over the last year has perhaps been the most rewarding thing I've been involved in. And the why it's so good is because it's about how you work with and for residents. So it's not about me, it's not about Manuel, it's not about the Green Party. You've all been involved. It's about bringing people together to find a way forward. And therefore, when we spoke against the absurd development, both Richard and I, and were successful, it was a fantastic outcome. But, and important here, it's just the start. It stopped a development. The developers are not going to go away. And as Katie, I think, hinted, we have to start thinking in the long term, as in the way that the developers are. This is about 20, 30, 40 years on, so that our children and grandchildren are able to use the piece. The history is important. The work that Val in particular and Janny Goodman have done must be acknowledged, and it also demonstrates the kind of things we need to do in the future to secure the peace. And as a minimum, that should be about some form of community management, in my view. Going back to a specific question about the CPO, I have been already working with, on behalf of the Friends, with the head of property and the head of legal to look at the potential for a CPO. And whilst it's not been thrown out as yet, I'd hate to promise anything, because it will come down to cost invariably, and it will come down to how much we get or have to spend to take this forward. And that will be negotiated with the head of law, the head of property, but also importantly with the Friends. So would I like it to happen? Of course, it'd be absolutely blooming wonderful, but it's going to be really difficult work. So anyway, let's hope it comes off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. And can I please thank all the candidates for speaking to time. You're doing a really, really good job of speaking promptly and succinctly. Thank you. Next, please, can I have the third question from the public?
Homelessness, precarious housing, and housing benefit problems are widespread in Cambridge, particularly for those on low pay. How would you address these problems?
Again, for each candidate, you've 2 minutes to answer, and I'll give a summary of the question when I name you in turn to answer. We are going to start with Richard Robertson for this question. If you can unmute, Richard, how would you improve the housing situation for those needing most help? Your answer, please.
Well, this is a very difficult question because so much of the issue is not in our control. It's a government-controlled matter. Housing benefit, for instance, is restricted in Cambridge to what is called the local housing allowance, which is the average of the sort of housing across the whole county. And of course, rents in the Fenland area are much lower than they are in Cambridge. But nevertheless, the same local housing allowance applies everywhere. We do what we can. We certainly help more on council tax rebates, which are very much linked to housing. There we have a scheme which takes into account that 100% of the council tax payments, whereas other councils do not take into account the whole percentage. For instance, South Cambs don't have as good a scheme as Cambridge does. So we do what we can on that side of things. Private housing landlords are a real problem in Petersfield. They charge an awful lot of money. They often evict tenants after their 6 months is up for no good reason often. We have introduced, we were looking at a scheme for developing more control over local housing private landlords, but in the end we're concentrating on improving the maintenance qualities of the private housing. Not just housing in multiple occupation, but other forms of privately owned housing will get more attention from the City Council in the future as a result of that. I think I'll leave it at that. We'll see if the others can think of some further areas where we are certainly doing the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Katie Thornborough, if you could please unmute. How would you improve the housing situation for those needing most help? Your answer, please.
Well, this government have built popularity in turning homes into assets, and it's going to take an awful long time to recover. Currently, there is 40% of new developments need to be affordable houses, and we will absolutely make sure that this continues through into the next local plan, and we will do everything we can to make sure that that is delivered on every single development. Regarding homelessness, I was really struck by at the beginning of the pandemic when the number of people on the streets increased dramatically due to mainly young people who were sort of sofa surfing, being thrown out of their homes or where they were staying because of the pandemic. They couldn't stay there because of the social distancing. The numbers on the streets went from just over 30 to over 100, but the Labour administration did house all of them, or provide housing and accommodation and food for all of them during the pandemic period. And we continue to house them all right now. They all have accommodation, and only those who refuse the accommodation will be on the streets. We're providing new module homes on brownfield sites in Cambridge. You may have seen the ones on Newmarket Road, working with homeless charities to provide the support that they need. Am I frozen?
You're okay, Katie, if you want to wrap up. Thank you, Katie.
So sorry about that. I was just mentioning, I think the module homes that are being provided in some brownfield sites.
So Katie, I think we've wrapped up your answer now. We've got the gist of your last point. So thank you very much. Next, we're going to go to Emmanuel Caro. If you could unmute, please. How would you improve the housing situation for those needing most help? Your answer, please.
The housing situation is not great. We all agree on that in Cambridge, especially in Petersfield. But I think it's too easy just to blame the Tory government on that, because part of the responsibility is at a local level and a city council. First thing is to maintain the existing social housing. We talk with a lot of local residents in Petersfield in social housing, and they have really a drop in the quality of maintenance. Some residents are really waiting to get their property repaired or improved. And is also an opportunity with the green development and grid subsidies to improve and upgrade the properties to get more environmental friendly social housing. So that's clearly the City Council have a role to be more ambitious in maintaining the existing council houses. Then is to develop more social housing. Again, I completely agree we need to build more. But then I think the current Labour City Council, they've just done the bare minimum. In Ironworks, I think the Lib Dem opposition, they ask for 50% on social housing, and it's been only 40%. So we need clearly to have more social housing. And also we need to encourage all residents in Petersfield to renovate the houses, and also private landlords need to be encouraged to upgrade the property in order to have really quality residence accommodation. And that there is a role for the city council to encourage and take advantage of national grants to get to upgrade the park of residence.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Mike Davey, you're next. If you could unmute, please. How would you improve the housing situation for those needing most help? Your answer, please.
I'd like to break this into 3 bits, if that's okay, Helen. First, in terms of homelessness, there was an increase in people on the street when the pandemic started. So I'm delighted to tell you that we offered everybody who's on the street a place, either in temporary or voluntary accommodation, and that was done successfully. And we also put in places action plans to prevent them going back onto the street afterwards, and that's maintained since the pandemic. So that's, I hope, a reassurance. In terms of poor housing quality, as I'm sure our colleagues know, our actual quality is above the regional average. So we go back as 94% is satisfactory, which is a high percentage, which is significantly more than elsewhere in the Eastern region. And finally, in terms of what we do about the future, Emmanuel's right, we do need more social housing, which is therefore great to be able to report that we've built 500 council houses and we're going to build another 1,000, which kind of indicates, because that's way above anybody else in the country, that we're actually on the game, and the Labour Party and the Labour Council continues to deliver for those in poverty, because the only way we're able to ensure that those in poverty get appropriate housing is to build new council housing. And most importantly of all, within that, it must be sustainable. And therefore, it's also excellent to be able to report that by 2022, all our houses will be passive house compliant that we built. So I think, and I hope, that's reassuring both to the people of Petersfield, but also to the city as a whole, that Labour takes homelessness and housing seriously. And not only that, we can actually prove we've delivered. We've delivered 500 new council houses. You find me a different district council that's done that. Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you, Mike. And next to speak is Cosmo Lupton. If you can unmute, please. The question again, how would you improve the housing situation for those needing most help? Your answer, please.
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest challenges facing the city. I think it's a real stain on the city that so many people are homeless and in insecure and poor housing, particularly a city as rich as ours. And we know that homelessness and poor housing are one of the things that most robs people of their independence and dignity. It's certainly something that motivates me, and I know it motivates the rest of the Liberal Democrat team. I've very much worked hard on this, supporting rough sleepers to access bereavement services, housing services, getting somewhere warm and safe to stay, supporting residents in getting urgent housing repairs, which have been left for months and months, and pleased that one will be happening tomorrow morning, in fact. I think there's 3 issues here. So the first is rough sleeping, which we know is obviously some of the most complex cases. We need to improve the safety net. Before COVID, and I fear after COVID, it won't necessarily be sufficiently strong. And I think particularly over the winter period, we need to make sure that we have a guaranteed unconditional bed for every rough sleeper. But I think we need to do more to tackle the real root of those problems. So we're calling for a multidisciplinary task force, bringing together the NHS, council, police, to make sure that we can have a real collaborative approach. We need to increase housing supply, particularly social housing, as has been touched upon. And I want to make sure that those homes really promote people's independence, particularly those with disabilities, for instance. Finally, I think quality is an important thing to touch upon. Both in the private sector, we need to make sure that we're cracking down on bad landlords, such as by reviewing the decision not to have a council accreditation scheme. But I think we do need to massively improve the quality of council homes. I've met too many people in truly dire situations, and I think we do need a fresh start on that. That means investment. I think it means a proper turnaround plan for council homes, and it will be one of my top priorities. So thank you.
Thank you, Cosmo. Shapur Mehta, if you could please unmute. How would you improve the housing situation for those needing most help? Your answer, please.
I think it's a big subject which we are trying to control. I mean, the Labour Party, the City Council, they've done a good job, because I can say that. And but we have to make sure, because once you're tackling the homelessness, you still see people that are sleeping rough outside every night, out and whatever. We have to find out the reason why they are not preferred to go back to their home instead of staying there and they're sleeping outside. The other thing is, we have to stick to that 40%, which is required by developments to provide that social housing for people to be able to afford to get inside. And the other issue, which is very important, we have to, the poor condition of the houses. If the council is not aware of it, we have to somehow tell these people, that live in those poor condition houses, to report those conditions to the council to be able to be fixed. Otherwise, I don't know if they can go and check it or whatever. If people are used to those poor conditions, it's impossible to change them. The other thing, for the private landlords, we have to make sure we are on top of it, because they are there just to make money. And they are very quick. If you can't pay for it, they get rid of you so quickly overnight. They don't care. They just kick you out and you become homeless. So somehow we have to make sure we are in control of a lot of things around this problem to be able to solve this problem. And all of us, you said different, all of us, we are trying to improve this, and it's going to take time, but we have to make sure that we are in control of it, not the private landlords or not the private property developers, which they all want to gain profit from whatever they can. Oh, thank you. Sorry, talking too much.
Thank you, Shapur. We're now going to go into our last and fourth question from the public. I'm going to ask our technical officer, Pete, could you help Katie get back on? She might be waiting if she's coming back on another line to get a better connection. If you could please help her. And we'll have the answers in a slightly different order this time to allow Shapur to break his fast from Ramadan and to allow a bit of time for Katie to be helped to get back online.
Katie can now bring her camera online.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask the question to be read out, for the fourth question from the public, please?
All right. Campaign flyers always express support for local businesses and for local residents. But one set was printed in Manchester and another in Watford. How will you protect the well-being of Petersfield's businesses and residents from conflicting commercial pressures from both inside and especially from outside the city?
Thank you. So for each candidate, you again 2 minutes to answer, and I'll give a summary of the question when I name you in turn to answer. Richard Robertson, could you please unmute? How will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
I got the first question again. How interesting. Right. Well,
I just to let you know, I flipped them slightly because I was expecting Shapur to break his fast at 8:20.
Sure,
so
okay.
Please just carry on.
Okay, I'll see what we can do with your question anyway. The Mill Road in particular has suffered quite badly from the last couple of years of interruptions of their trading. In 2019, there was the problems of the bridge being closed and the fire and the digging up the road. All these works accumulated, and then COVID came along and added to their woes. And it's been important for us to make sure that we do what we can to support traders in the ward, and particularly Mill Road. One of the last things I did was I was Executive Council for Finance, was to make sure that the money that we're getting, the city is getting from the government to support economic recovery is, although it's targeted at the city centre, I made sure that some of it will be allocated for work on neighbourhood shopping areas, just like Mill Road, and in fact Mill Road in particular. So we will be making sure that some of the economic recovery money that is available from the government will go into the enterprises on that street. I think it's important to look into what we can do about developing people's awareness of the businesses in their home area and making use of those businesses. And it's not just shops. There's lots of small offices and workshops and traders who are working out of shops. I think there's quite a lot of work to be done with them. And I'm hoping that some of this economic recovery money will go into that side of things. So I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for going first again. Next, can I please ask Shapur Metfer if you could please unmute? And the question is, how will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
I think because of the COVID-19, Mill Road businesses suffered very badly, and it was a very bad time for all of us. And because I've got a business as well, my business went down completely, and I was trying to survive. I think the main important is we have other issues which is not helping us from a lot of things is happening. I think what we should do is we have to promote the businesses which are in Mill Road, shops, private businesses. There are lots of businesses around Mill Road, side roads, everything. We have to make sure those businesses are accessible and people, they know about it. And I had a customer a couple of days ago. He came and he was looking for something. I said, there is one around the corner. I didn't know anything about it. So it's nice to be able to inform that Mill Road provides these facilities. We are not just like a food market or restaurants. People, they come to Mill Road to just eat, have fun, and go. Mill Road is different, or Petersfield is different things. There are lots of businesses that offer different things which people they can use, they can come and spend their money. So I think promotion is very important, and we have to make sure everybody knows what is available locally, which they can be accessed easily. Easily means bridge. We have to make sure that bridge is open so people they can cross, because people that don't like using to go round. So it's a lot of issues we have to consider, but promotion is very important. And I don't want to go over my time this time. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Shapur. Katie Thornborough, please could you unmute? How will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
Petersfield has changed so much in the last 50, 30, 20, 10 years. There's a lot more office space now and there's less industry. But we really, right now, the main focus has to be on local shops, how we support them, local pubs, how do we support them as well, Regain, and the restaurants. But also I'm a local architect. I've run my own small business for 30 years, and I know quite a lot of architects have been struggling as well, hidden away businesses. Some have really benefited from the government support, which has been very quickly and appreciatively given out by the City Council. And I think some of the larger companies have done okay too, but some of the medium-sized companies have just missed out on some of the grants. And I think we really need to reach out to those people and try and help them as well. But I don't think that we can do this on a ward-by-ward basis. Really, the whole of Cambridge needs to come together to support these local businesses. And we need a really strong administration, like the Labour administration, to deliver for the whole of Cambridge now and going forward, and bringing forward some really good green initiatives as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Emmanuel Caro, can you please unmute your question? How will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
I mean, it is essential to have a really, really strong and vivid economy here in Petersfield. I mean, I'm a local tech entrepreneur. I'm running a successful local startup. And I'm also a guest lecturer in business at Cambridge University, and I'm mentoring entrepreneurs. So I'm well equipped to help and support businesses across Petersfield. And we really need to have a plan. Post-COVID, we need a proper plan to promote local businesses, to create local events, to bring the community together, to buy local, but also we need to bring all the community together. It's not us versus them, you know, it's not like the local versus the big corporation. We know around the train station, there's a lot of big corporation, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, etc. And there's a lot of employees, a lot of freelancers, a lot of people. So we need to bring these people to use the local shops, to use the local cafes and restaurants and local trade, and to be more involved with the community. The same with the university. We are lucky to have two great universities in Petersfield. We have Anglia Ruskin, and we have part of Cambridge University, Husol, which was my college. And there's a lot of synergy there. We need to work and bring the student to be more involved with the community. We need to have much more organization, NGOs, small and big companies, and university to sponsor and to support the community, to serve the community. So it's the role of the councillors, I think, to guide them and to serve the community, to use outside money and energy to say, guys, there is a lot of things going on. Let's have a plan and let's create a more vibrant community together.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Mike Davey, you're next. How will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
Thank you, Helen. I was fortunate enough to succeed Richard as the Exec Councillor for Finance and Resources in September last year. So I've been involved in quite a few processes around the economic regeneration of the city post the pandemic. I think the first thing we need to do is to make sure grants get to the businesses as they require them to help them, to support them get out of the pandemic. It's been a horrible, horrible time for businesses. And the best thing we can do as a city council is to make sure we do our job, i.e. get the money out quickly as possible. So that's the first priority. I think the second thing is to start in terms of planning for the future. Richard has already pointed out, he's party to and instigated the notion that the Economic Recovery Officer that we just employed will be looking at Mill Road. That has to be done in partnership with other organisations without getting into local government bureaucracy. The combined authority, I'm afraid, takes the lead in responsibility for the economic recovery post the pandemic. But that does require us to work in partnership. And it does require us particularly to work in partnership with our colleagues in South Cambridgeshire, because they suffer from the same issues that we do. It's just different. I think the next bit, which goes back to the Petersfield, how do we help Petersfield? I've been involved in looking at community wealth building, which is an interesting idea about how the public sector bodies come together and pool resources to target effectively the local communities. And I think this might be actually the way forward, because it means and enables us as public sector bodies to come together and to identify people from within our communities rather than extant. In the past, public sector have tended to go for the cheap option and get whoever it is wherever they are. That's not helpful, because it means that communities suffer. So I think there's three bits to my answer, Helen, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Cosmo Lupton, if you could please unmute. How will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
Thank you. Well, I think I'll always want to put residents' interests first in those questions, and certainly I think, for instance, aspirations over climate change and air pollution when it comes to new developments like new office spaces, that's got to be the thing that the kind of thing that the council really is tough on, and make sure that they are responding to what residents want with those, rather than just rolling over to those commercial interests. I don't think that the two have to conflict though necessarily, and I think certainly supporting strong local businesses and also making sure that there is real connection between the community and business. So one of the things that we've been talking about is a community cohesion programme and a community cohesion fund, which would particularly fight disadvantage in our community, providing strong opportunities for our young people in terms of work experience and training with local businesses. Obviously, we need to support the local businesses that we have, including on Mill Road. I think important to that is to really listen. I know I've said that before, but I think it's an important point. No local politician knows as well as traders themselves what those businesses need. And so what we've been talking about is something called a business improvement district, funding and evaluation of that. And that would mean that businesses would be able to lead on what improvements they want to see on Mill Road, and would really have a sort of consultation process rather than us just pointing out what we want to see. And I think that's the best way forward for that. I think there's some other aspects as well where we can strengthen that community business bond, making sure that we're continuing to promote a real living wage across the city, working with the Greater Cambridge Partnership to improve skills training and careers advice across the board. I think that we're missing a few key things at the moment, and I think that's something that really needs attention. So I don't think they need to conflict. I think we can do some simple things to make sure they don't.
Thank you, Cosmo. Thank you again to all the candidates for speaking to time, and we're coming now to closing statements. And I really want to thank the public for an excellent set of questions. We've only been able to have 4 priority questions asked publicly, but there will be an opportunity for the questions and candidates to answer on the website later. So candidates now have 1 minute to make a closing statement to say why the public should vote for them. The running order for closing statements will be Thornborough, Carrow, Davey, Lupton, Mefta, Robertson. So Katie Thornborough, if you could please unmute your closing statement, please.
What an intense session this has been. The questions have been great, but I have wanted to say much more in response. I will answer the rest of the questions offline, and I'm also happy to speak privately to anyone who wants to call me or meet up before the elections next week. Please do contact me. Being a good ward councillor means being there, being available, and willing to work with others, and I will do that. I can't fix every problem in the ward, but when residents get in touch with me raising an issue, they are owed not only my best efforts to sort out their concerns, but also a decent response. I will answer every email, letter, phone call, and follow up on everything raised in person. I may not be able to solve every problem, but I will take every problem seriously. And with the backing of the other fine Labour councillors and the Labour team in Petersfield, there's a lot we can do to make a difference to people's lives.
Thank you, Katie. Emmanuel Caro, your closing statement, please unmute. Thank you.
Thank you. So Petersfield needs a fresh start. We need a new city council with a real vision to tackle climate change, to tackle housing crisis, and to bring the community together with more cultural, social events. The Lib Dems in Petersfield have an amazing team with the necessary skills and experience to serve the community. Personally, I'm a local tech entrepreneur running a successful startup, and I'm also a guest lecturer and a mentor at Cambridge University. I have lived in multiple countries and I speak several languages fluently. And I want to bring these experiences to serve Petersfield. I want to bring the best practices and ideas from other places. I want also to build bridges with Cambridge University, Anglia Ruskin, local businesses, NGOs, to really create something great together. So please vote Liberal Democrats to bring a fresh start for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Mike Davey, your closing statement, please.
Okay, the sell. Why you should vote for me. I know Petersfield. I've been here I've been involved in the ward for the last 11 years. I know the local issues. I have a history of representing you successfully on issues linked to the Mill Road Depot, the Flying Pig, or St Matthew's Piece, be it tackling antisocial behaviour or assisting on planning issues. I will listen and then communicate back to you, be it good or bad news. I know how local government works, and I do and can represent and articulate your views and wishes, regardless, importantly, regardless whether you vote for me or not. The last 2 years have been incredibly rewarding and incredibly challenging. I feel like I've only just started, and I would love the opportunity to continue to represent Petersfield and its residents on the City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Cosmo Lupton, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. Liberal Democrats want people here to have a real say over the decisions that affect them and their lives. That's what underpins our top priorities for Petersfield. We're going to listen to residents all year round so that you can hold us accountable and so that we can work together on tackling the things that matter to you. I've listened to nearly 1,000 of you over this campaign. You're going to keep seeing my face if I'm elected your councillor. I'm also going to fight those injustices that really undermine people's independence. That means, for instance, tackling homelessness and poor housing, and tackling the scandalously poor quality of the City Council's housing service. We've worked with vulnerable, elderly and disabled residents to improve what our city offers them. And we're going to get the basics right. I know a lot of people feel ignored by politicians because persistent problems are left undealt with. Formal complaints about council services have tripled. We've got to do better. I and the Liberal Democrat team will take some simple steps to improve performance and transparency. We need a fresh start for this city. Let's vote for it this May. Thank you.
Thank you, Cosmo. Shapur Mefta, your closing statement, please.
As the chairman of Mill Road Traders Association and ambassador for the White Ribbon campaign against domestic violence and abuse, I feel confident in my ability to listen and help people as much as I can. As I previously mentioned, I've got some experience of being a city councillor. So I know how the system's supposed to work, all of which will make me a good, if I good councillor, if I be elected. I know many people, they come to my shop to use my shop as a community hub to talk to me all about their issues and problems. And I know that a lot can be done, and we have to reunite the Petersfield and Romsey. We keep saying one road, one community. So we have to do our best to get them all reunited and make sure that we can have a better future for everybody. 6 seconds, 5 seconds. Thank you very much. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Shapur. Richard Robertson, if you could unmute, please, your closing statement.
Thank you. So I'm your last speaker, and I hope everyone has enjoyed this evening's hustings. Now, some people feel that party politics should not exist, or not at a local level anyway. However, in my experience, it provides for a clear set of policies to be put forward for consideration by the public and then put into effect by those who are elected. That is not to say we should not cooperate as councillors, though, from different parties. And there is already a high level of engagement and collaboration across the political parties. But something like climate change, it is vital we all work together. Unfortunately, this does not always happen. I am one of the trustees of the Staff Pension Fund for the councils of the whole of Cambridgeshire. And when I proposed a few weeks ago that the fund should divest from fossil fuels, I received no backing from any of the other trustees, including 2 Liberal Democrat county councillors. I feel the electorate will remember that when they vote next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you to all the candidates for keeping to time and doing well in what maybe is an enjoyable but also probably quite stressful situation. So thank you to all the candidates and to the public for engaging with the process. A special thanks to the moderators and to Val and to Pete in particular for your commitment to make these hustings events and accompanying website happen. So these hustings are a new event for our community in Petersfield, and the organising team have also provided an excellent website with the information showing the bewildering boundaries of Petersfield County and City, listing the public service areas for county and city councils, and the names of the candidates, their photographs and their parties and their statements. Importantly, every candidate has not only been invited to these hustings, but you'll also find on the website that each candidate has been invited to answer 6 introductory questions before the hustings, all of which are crucial for assessing their candidacies. And after the hustings, candidates standing for election who do not attend the live hustings will still be invited to provide answers to the questions via email. So these, in the interests of fairness, can be displayed on the website. to ensure that as organisers, we've done our best to provide as much information as we can about all 12 of the City Council candidates for Petersfield. Plus, as there have been more questions tonight than the live hustings will allow time for, these extra questions will be emailed to all 12 candidates afterwards, seeking answers we will promptly display on our website when we receive them. We hope the Petersfield hustings will be a useful resource not only up to the 6th May election, but afterwards, in order to follow up with candidates on the priority issues raised by local residents. Our aim as an organising team for the Petersfield hustings is this is not just an ephemeral event, but the site provides a permanent record that will be of long-term value to the Petersfield community. Please do engage with the website. The link will be again in the chat room stream for you to see and click on it. Also, we'll circulate links to the supporting community groups to share with their memberships, and also to remind folk, importantly, to vote in the 6th May local elections. Thank you again to everyone who has participated tonight, both the public and also to the candidates, and good luck to everybody on the 6th of May. Thank you.